In Lesson 8, we'll be looking at Colossians 2:16 through 23. That's the second part of the section that was already read back in Lesson 2, but now it's being read in the context of the broader letter and not to establish the purpose of the letter's initial writing. And as we've seen, the Judaizers were this group very active in the first century church, teaching contradictory doctrines to those that the other apostles and like Paul taught. And it had everything to do with this Old Testament law system. And their teachings were causing all of these problems among the Gentiles and the churches, and so these letters like Colossians were written to address really those issues. And in this section, we will see that Paul is very concerned that the Gentiles reject any teaching that advocates for a righteousness earned by works. And again, it's important to understand that you're really not going to find anybody teaching that in the early church outside of the Judaizers, these people who bring in the law and begin trying to hold the Gentiles to that standard. That whole system of earned righteousness is what Paul is trying to get them to avoid. And this section of text, 16 through 23, really is the heart of Paul's message to the Colossian church. He's explained to them how Christ is superior to both the law and the Gentile rulers. And now he is explaining what the supremacy of Christ means for them in their day-to-day lives. And he's really getting at the idea that no one should judge them with regard to the Old Testament law codes. Neither Judaizer nor Gentile should be judging them with regards to what he calls things which are only a shadow of what is to come, but the substance of which belongs to Christ. It's a very interesting idea that he's communicating. Essentially what he is pointing out is that the system of earned righteousness is not from revelation from God, but is the product of man's teachings regarding the law, or a misunderstanding of the Old Testament. In other words, a fundamental misunderstanding of the law and its purpose leads to this system of earned righteousness. So it really is a misinterpretation of the Old Testament that leads to these problems. And he is encouraging them to accept the fullness of Christ and his revelation while rejecting the system of earned righteousness, because Christ is himself the fulfillment of the law and the very thing that Old Testament revelation anticipates. That's the irony of what he's saying here. And the irony of his teaching is that the misunderstanding regarding the Old Testament law system fundamentally misses the point of Christ, which the Old Testament is supposed to anticipate. The law is supposed to anticipate Christ, who is the fulfillment of the law. And that's really the core of what he wants his readers to understand here.